Ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, welcome back. And this right here is the most important event of the 19th century. I know, stop typing, it's okay. I know what happened in 1799, but close enough, right? It's also said that, you know, the 19th century ended in 1914 with the outbreak of World War I, right? But I'm of the opinion that the most important event of the 20th century was the Russian Revolution, also to be debated. And the most important event of the 19th century was this coup right here. Napoleon taking power of France. Him seizing power of the country and becoming the emperor of the French in the Brumaire coup. Let's have a look at this one from Epic History TV. This is a follow-up to the Egypt series. If you haven't been watching that, I just did the two most recent videos on that. I'll put a thing in the top left here with those two. Let's get into it. We need Bonaparte. A general.
October 1799. After 500 days campaigning in Egypt and Syria, Napoleon has returned to France. And with a small entourage, he travels north to Paris. Everywhere he goes, he is greeted by crowds, embraced by dignitaries, and feted as a conquering hero.
And remember too, this is the propaganda at work. Those people in France don't know what actually happened, right? They don't know about the defeat that they suffered and the fact that Napoleon basically left all his men behind. Was he forced to do this? I would argue yes, but these people obviously don't know this, right? The propaganda is working. The fact of the amazing discoveries that they've made, the defeats, some of the amazing and truly amazing victories that were had against the Ottoman Empire there, and the generals there in Egypt were really quite astounding. And so Napoleon is the man on the planet right now from all the propaganda and from all the amazing victories that are happened, and something that France needs too. These morale boosters that are happening in Egypt is far better than what's going on the eastern frontier of France's borders.
But such celebrations cannot hide that France is a country in crisis and despair. Banditry is so rife that Napoleon's own luggage is stolen en route. Prices are soaring. So too are taxes. Trade has been decimated by years of war and blockade. There is conscription, censorship, and corruption. Abroad, France once more faces a powerful coalition of enemies. And though General Massena's brilliant victory at Zurich has won respite, France is not safe yet.
And I mean, look at, you have Napoleon's amazing Italian campaign, and all those gains in the north of Italy there have been completely lost, right? All the way through here have not only been pushed back, but they're now actually knocking on France's borders as well, right? With just this small regiment here in Genoa. But all that progress, all those brilliant victories lost, at least temporarily.
But in Bonaparte, many see a savior for the country. Thanks to his own propaganda, everyone has heard of his brilliant victories in Italy and Egypt. His name is celebrated in newspapers and plays.
Look at that flow.
The air rings with cries of, "Hurrah for Bonaparte! He will save the country!" Not everyone is thrilled by the general's return.
Probably those in power not too thrilled.
At the very top of French government, some wonder if Bonaparte should not be court-martialed for abandoning his army in Egypt, and now flouting France's quarantine laws. However, Napoleon does now have a letter from the Directory ordering his return to France, though he acted before receiving it.
The Directory awaits you and the brave soldiers who are with you. Yeah, they're still in Egypt, right? And they will be for the next 2 years until eventually the British will take everything over. And that is its whole history in and of itself of what eventually happens to Egypt. But we'll get there.
There's also concern that a move against such a hugely popular general could easily backfire. For his part, Napoleon regards the government with contempt, a sentiment he's happy to share in private. Over breakfast, he tells General Thibault, "These men are bringing France down to the level of their own blundering. They are degrading her." Well, what can generals expect from this government of lawyers? To Napoleon, it's self-evident that he would do a better job, given all his glorious achievements in Italy and Egypt.
I mean, the thing is, too, he's kind of right. Right? That's the thing, is that, I mean, France goes on to obviously conquer bloody well most of continental Europe, and although it would all eventually fall due to his own hubris or his own blunders, mistakes, however you look at it, it's kind of right, no?
Since 1795, France has been ruled by the Directory, a 5-man executive whose members hold power for 5 years. In 1799, its members are Paul Barras, Napoleon's first patron, infamously corrupt and dissolute, but a shrewd political operator. He has been a permanent member of the Directory since its formation. Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, a former priest who wrote the revolution's most famous political pamphlet, now regarded as the leading political thinker in France. Then 3 staunch Republicans, appointed to the Directory just 4 months ago, under outside pressure. Louis Goyer, a veteran Jacobin and former minister in the National Convention. Jean-François Moulin, a Jacobin general who had commanded in the bloody war in the Vendée. And Pierre-Roger Ducos, a more moderate figure and ally of Sieyès.
Maybe I'm just forgetting something here, but wouldn't have all the Jacobins and those that were influenced by his ideology, would have they, or maybe I'm confusing him with Robespierre. Anyways, I thought one of them, like any of their sort of compatriots and people that followed along their ideological lines, were basically expelled and seen as sort of heretics, if you will. I might be messing up my history here, but let me know in the comment section down below.
The other major element of government, the legislature, is comprised of the Council of 500, who draft laws, and the Council of Elders, who approve them. Members of both councils dress in extravagant costumes, inspired by their great model to which they refer constantly, the ancient Republic of Rome.
Yeah.
This government, the Directory in particular, is now widely regarded as corrupt, ineffective, and unfit to survive. And powerful men on the inside will play a leading role in its destruction.
This guy right here.
On his return to Paris, Napoleon takes up residence in the home of the Beauharnais family on Rue de
These are awesome.
La Victoire, which has been renamed in his own honor. Given the unsettled political climate, he faces an uncertain and potentially dangerous few months in the capital. One man he can count on as a valuable guide, his younger brother, Lucien. He serves in the Council of 500 as the deputy for Corsica, and has recently been elected its president. As such, he will be a key player in the weeks ahead.
A huge player. Could even say the player outside of Napoleon himself.
But first comes a stormy reunion with his wife Josephine, which quickly gives way to a passionate rapprochement. Both have been guilty of infidelities, but Napoleon is clearly still in love, and his earlier talk of divorce is quietly forgotten. Henceforth, Josephine will prove a faithful wife, and through her social connections, an important political ally. Paris is awash with talk of plots and conspiracies. Rumours of threats from the left, ex-Jacobins, who oversaw the bloody days of the Terror. And from the right, secret royalists who want to turn back the clock. And there are those who seek a third option. Soon after his arrival in Paris, Napoleon receives a visit from France's ex-foreign minister, Maurice de Talleyrand. Talleyrand, a keen observer of which way the political wind was blowing, had resigned from the government in July. Having worked with Napoleon in planning the Egyptian expedition, he now proposes they collaborate on another plan.
Sorry, I just gotta know, these bloody videos are so good. I mean, oh my god, like they rival TV productions and stuff like this, even though clearly the budget isn't there. Just all the intricacies here with the paintings and how you have the maps and moving along the shadows and stuff like this. This has nothing to do with the context or the history or anything. I just want to nerd out on these videos because I absolutely love them.
To replace the government of France. Napoleon, disgusted by the current regime, immediately welcomes the idea. Talleyrand then reveals that a member of the Directory itself is working to bring down the regime. Sieyès. The country's leading political thinker has decided that the Directory must be cast aside, and that France must have a new constitution, which he intends to write.
It's just funny to think of all the absolute crazy amount of instability that the people of France have gone through in the past handful of years or so, right? You obviously have the breakout of the revolution, and to that, you overthrow your entire system of government. You kill the bloody king, right, as well as his wife, and execute hundreds, if not thousands, of power-wielding individuals, dukes and whatnot. And from there, you go through a terror where neighbors are turning on each other, people are killing each other left, right, and center. There's public denouncement all the time. There's also foreign countries that are knocking at France's border, as well as you're having civil wars too in France as well, in Brittany, if I remember correctly. And all of this, just sheer chaos. You have a brief moment of stability here with the Directory and the lower house and the upper house. And then it's plotting another coup to throw this Napoleon guy into power, right? And then after this, you have, albeit brilliant, amazing victories, but nonetheless, you still then have the men and sons of France dying in the tens of thousands for these foreign expeditions and for these wars. You have crazy, as well, price inflations and trade issues and everything like this. Whew. Crazy time. Absolutely wild time in France's history. Probably the most unstable. I don't know. Maybe it's the most unstable time that France has ever had.
He plans.
Is this leading up until what? Maybe Napoleon III? But even then, still you have the Franco-Prussian War in there. Crazy.
To sweep away the chaotic, unruly legislature and its weak, ineffectual executive. To save the Republic, radical reforms are needed, and an entirely new form of government. Sieyès already has the support of another director, Roger Ducos, and the president of the Council of Elders, Louis-Nicolas Lemercier. He even has the support of the president of the Council of 500, Lucien Bonaparte.
There we go.
Minister of Police, Joseph Fouché, who has eyes and ears across Paris, is also aware of their conspiracy, but has agreed not to intervene. Now Sieyès seeks a sword, as he puts it, a military figurehead to keep the army on side and be wielded at the decisive moment, and then sheathed afterwards.
And so I've been reading this book recently here called How Democracies Die, and while it gets into quite a lot of topics of, quite a lot of points of exactly that, of how do democracies die, a lot of the times when coups are successfully, or well, you know, in this case, it's kind of the bad guy who's throwing over the liberal democracy. But nonetheless, you always need to have some sort of force on your hands, right? You always need to have either the police or the military. And if the police are just going to stand by and have it happen and the army be active, or vice versa, right? You always need that physical force, that physical sort of, you know, what would you say? Force-wielding institution on your side to be able to elect that sort of change. Albeit this book does deal with sort of the more slow decaying of democracy than outright big, massive coups that we saw in the early 20th century, for example, with Mussolini and other sort of these fascist regimes, but rather the sort of slow decay of democracy, like, for example, in Argentina during the 1970s, or Venezuela as well, and more recently in the early 2000s and the 1990s.
But such a man is proving difficult to find.
Go read it.
Sieyès' first choice had been General Joubert, Napoleon's talented subordinate at Rivoli. But he'd been killed earlier that year, shot dead at the Battle of Norvy in northern Italy. General MacDonald is sounded out, but is too much the honest Republican for such skullduggery. General Moreau, who has led the army of the Rhine with great success, declines the role. In a moment he will later regret. He recommends Bonaparte.
Yeah, let's take this crazy upstart guy with unlimited ambition, who's bold as hell, right? Has his sights clearly set on power, and whose brother is the president of the lower house. That's our guy. He's just going to be the sword, though. Just the sword. Someone else will lead. Someone else will lead. Not that guy who's crazy influential, incredibly popular, and has limitless ambition that humanity has never quite seen.
There's your man. He will make a better job of your coup d'etat than I could.
It becomes his coup d'etat.
Sieyès does not like Napoleon. His ambition is too obvious. It is Talleyrand who persuades Sieyès that they have found their sword. On the 23rd of October...
And the sword will be the one that will stab them in the back.
Napoleon and Sieyès meet for the first time. They agree that the Republic is in grave peril, from enemies within and without, and that the Directory cannot meet the challenge. Within a week, they agree to launch a coup to overthrow the government of France. The conspirators plan their coup for the 7th of November, 16th Brumaire, according to France's revolutionary calendar.
Oh yeah,
the month
of
fog.
Forgot about that.
It's a risky operation that will take 2 days, during which any number of things could go wrong. Many of the plotters take precautions. Sieyès carries a briefcase stuffed with cash for a quick getaway. Fouché, the Minister of Police, has drafted orders for Napoleon's arrest in case he needs to switch sides. Napoleon sleeps with 2 loaded pistols by his bed. At the last minute, there's a 48-hour postponement. So instead, that night, Bonaparte dines at General Bernadotte's apartment on the Rue de Cisalpine. They are joined by Generals Moreau and Jourdan. He wants the support of these influential generals for his coup. Moreau agrees to help. Jourdan promises not to interfere. But Bernadotte is outraged and warns Napoleon that he'll be guillotined. "We'll see," says Napoleon.
I mean, to be the fly on the wall in that dinner conversation, right? We'll see. This guy.
The 9th of November, Paris. In the crisp hours before dawn, Napoleon meets around 60 officers that he's invited to his house. He informs them that he's decided he must act to save the Republic and asks for their support. They affirm their loyalty with oaths of allegiance. The most important man to convince is General Lefebvre, the no-nonsense military commander of Paris. But Napoleon knows his man. He presents Lefebvre with the sword he wore at the Battle of the Pyramids as a mark of his great esteem, and the general is won over.
Cool.
"Let's go throw those bloody lawyers in the river," he growls. At 7 a.m., the Council of Elders meets in an unscheduled early session at the Tuileries Palace. Only Sieyès' allies have been invited, so without opposition, they quickly passed 2 measures. First, Napoleon is to be given immediate command of the Paris military district, using the pretext of a non-existent Jacobin plot. Second, tomorrow the legislature will move from its usual meeting place in the center of Paris to the Château de Saint-Cloud, 5 miles west outside the city.
Nice and secluded.
This, the plotters tell the council, is for their own safety. The Paris mob is famed for its unpredictable and violent political interventions. The move
you know, at least tradition is still being upheld in Paris, right?
is, of course, to protect the conspirators themselves from such an event. At 10 a.m., Napoleon arrives at the Tuileries. He speaks to the Council of Elders, reassures them that the trusted generals Lefebvre and Berthier are by his side, and concludes, "We want a republic founded upon true liberty, on civil liberty, on national representation. We will have it. I swear it." Meanwhile, that morning at the Luxembourg Palace, where the 5 directors reside, Sieyès and Roger Ducos announce their resignation and urge Barras, Goyer and Moulin to follow suit. Barras decides to take a long bath and will not be disturbed.
Okay.
Perhaps he is mulling his options, or waiting for an offer. When it comes, it is from Talleyrand, the man who perhaps understands him best. With the help of an enormous bribe, and the reassurance that he will keep all his estates, Barras agrees to resign. France's longest-serving director, and once formidable power broker, quietly leaves the stage. He is driven to his country house that evening, under military escort.
Probably the smartest move. Maybe he saw the winds of change coming. Maybe he had a suspicion of what was going on. Maybe he was tipped off. Who knows? But what happened to him after, I actually have no idea. I'm curious.
Goyer and Moulin are not so easily persuaded, and so they are placed under house arrest by General Moreau. Their objections are futile. With the resignation of 3 directors, the executive is constitutionally defunct. The conspirators have what they want, a power vacuum, to which they will propose a solution the next day at Chateau de Saint-Cloud.
Let's make the directory of everyone who agrees with each other. Right? Right?
It will be a day on which the future of France hinges. That evening, as Napoleon rides through the Place de la Concorde, where so many had died under the guillotine, he turns to his secretary. "Tomorrow," he says, "either we will sleep at the Luxembourg, or we'll end up here."
Did Napoleon feel fear? You know? Just any sort of... Or was his ambition so high that he just didn't care? Jury's out, honestly.
Napoleon rises at 4 a.m. and rides to Saint-Cloud. There he meets Murat, newly promoted to General of Division, whose 6,000 troops surround the chateau.
Okay.
Officially, they're there to guard the council members. But as deputies arrive for the day's session, the heavy military presence is impossible to miss. There are long delays. Benches have to be found for the chambers. Council members have time to mingle and discuss the many swirling rumours. This time, the Jacobin deputies are present, and they're not happy at being excluded from the previous day's meeting. When the councils finally begin their sessions at 1 p.m, the mood is raucous. The sudden resignation of the directors, the presence of so many troops, the claims of a Jacobin plot. There is much to discuss.
I mean, it is a little suspicious, right? You know, it's kind of setting off your alarm bells here. Especially everything that's happened in the past couple of years, I mean.
The plotters had hoped for a quick vote to establish a new provisional government. But the presidents of both councils struggle to take charge. Hours pass. Napoleon loses patience.
Yep.
At 4 p.m, he bursts into the Council of Elders. As he begins to speak, he is heckled and derided. Napoleon is thrown off balance. He rambles, mutters, then hesitates. When a deputy interrupts, "What of the Constitution?" Napoleon flings back, "The Constitution? You yourselves annihilated it." There is uproar. Napoleon continues, demanding action from the council. Anyone who speaks against him, he strongly implies, has been paid by the British. To any such deputy, he warns, "May the lightning of war crush him instantaneously. Remember that I walk accompanied by the god of war and by the god of fortune." These
Probably the only god that Napoleon really believed in was fortune itself.
chosen words seem to confirm the Assembly's very worst suspicions. By some accounts, Napoleon has to be dragged from the chamber by his staff, shouting, "You are scoundrels! I will have you shot if you don't obey me." Napoleon is shaken,
here,
but
right?
not defeated. Within minutes, he storms down the corridor into the Council of 500, where the president, his brother, has lost all semblance of control. The mood here is of even greater defiance. The deputies have spent the morning swearing oaths of loyalty to the Constitution. And when Napoleon arrives, flanked by grenadiers, he receives a torrent of abuse. "Down with the tyrant," they cry. outlaw, Caesar, Cromwell. These the names of famous generals turned tyrant.
You know, actually being compared to Julius Caesar probably kind of took that as a compliment, right? I mean, you know, it's not the, well, general terms, it's probably not the worst insult, but I can see
as the crowd presses in, he is grabbed, jostled, even punched. Lefebvre and his grenadiers rush in to extricate Napoleon from the scaffold. They haul him clear and drag him into the courtyard outside.
Is there another chamber of hundreds of people that Napoleon can go try and convince? Messy. Very messy right now.
Napoleon is rattled and bloodied. He seems unsure what to do. His old comrade, General Augereau, now a council member, comes out to see him. "You're in deep water now," Augereau tells him. Napoleon regains his composure. "It was worse at Arculay." Nevertheless, the coup totters on the brink of disaster. If the council declares Napoleon an outlaw, it could mean a firing squad or a swift trip to the guillotine.
Which is as he
But
said.
the riotous disorder has played into his hands. He is the military commander of Paris. When he hears Jacobin deputies are keeping his brother Lucien in the chamber against his will, grenadiers are sent to bring him out. Napoleon attempts to rally troops for a decisive intervention. News of his manhandling by the deputies outrages his old comrades. They are raring to go. But the Legislative Guard, the 400 troops charged with protecting the council, are not convinced.
Ooh.
It is Lucien who seizes the moment. He mounts a horse and announces, "Citizens, soldiers, the great majority of the council is at this moment being terrorized by a handful of deputies armed with daggers. These brigands are doubtless in English pay. I declare to you that these madmen have made themselves outlaws by their assaults upon the liberty of this council." Then he draws a sword and points it at Napoleon's chest. "I swear that I will stab my own brother to the heart if he ever makes an assault on the liberty of Frenchmen." The doubters are won over.
Now that is theatrics. Right? I mean, that, come on. How can you not be moved? We're sitting here over 200 years later, and we're moved just by that in and of itself. I mean, come on, right? And of course I restarted it. So, I mean, Lucien right there, the player of the day that made his brother Emperor of the French.
A signal is given.
And that's that.
With bayonets fixed.
And right there, in that moment, that changed the world. Period. Right? There's no other way to look at it. There's not one single contained event that might have changed a province of France indefinitely. This changed the world. And we're still living in that world, and we're still feeling its effects to this day.
Flood into the Council of 500, with General Murat at their head. "Citizens, you are dissolved," he shouts. And then to his men, "Get this damn rabble out of here." The deputies scatter. By some accounts, they jump out of windows, leaving their robes and hats strewn across the gardens. Certainly, the conspirators had hoped to avoid the use of troops. But it had always been a backup plan, one that turned out to be desperately needed. Later that evening, a few deputies are rounded up to form a rump council of 500. Joined by the similarly cowed Council of Elders, they approve the measures that are suggested to them. The dissolution of the Directory, the adjournment of both councils for 4 months, though they will never meet again,
I was just going to say that,
and the appointment of 3 provisional consuls, a term borrowed from the Roman Republic. Emmanuel Joseph Seyss, Pierre-Roger Ducos, and General Napoleon Bonaparte.
one of these people is not like the other.
3 years, 8 months since he took command of the army of Italy, Napoleon has risen to the summit of political power in France. He will now be one of 3 men in charge of drafting a new constitution for the Republic. But through his brilliance, energy, and immense popularity, he will soon overshadow his 2 colleagues. Only one man will emerge to rule France. The first consul, Napoleon Bonaparte. And what better way to cement his hold on power than a new military campaign and a return to Italy. Do you want to see our newest and most visually spectacular video?
That's all I can say. Epic History TV, the finest YouTube channel that there has ever been. And what an event. Again, we can discuss it in the comment section down below. I know what happened in 1799. The most important event of the 19th century. Hands down. Thank you very much for watching this with me. I really appreciate it. More Epic History TV videos on the way. And I mean, what is there to say? It's absolutely brilliant. I also do exclusive videos over on the Patreon. If you would like, please become a member there. I appreciate all your support. Thank you so much for watching with me. Let's talk down below. Till next time.